Wasn't allowed to share my language with my stepson because his mother said it was wrong, but after I had a baby she showed up at my door and said something unexpected. I never imagined that I would have to fight for motherhood, and particularly not with the individual who had once borne the exact same child whom I came to love as if they were my own. My existence was muted prior to knowing them. I worked a lot. I cooked dinner for one. I returned home to nothing and slept in a bed that never did feel quite small enough. My family was so far away, across the ocean, and I'd spent years pretending, trying to fit in, trying to make this new place home. I'd grown used to the emptiness. I'd disguised it with schedules and routines. But with him, my boyfriend, that silence finally cracked wide open. He had a son. A quiet, watching, beautiful boy with a hesitant smile. And the first time I saw him, I felt something shift inside of me, like my heart flung itself open without taking the trouble to ask my permission. Not at once, of course. He didn't immediately favor me. He'd plop down on the couch cushion when I visited, glancing in my direction but never holding my gaze for more than a second or two. I never pressed it. I just placed myself at hand, sitting next to as he built Lego skyscrapers, asking him gentle questions, sharing things little about me with him. Slowly, he started to chat more with me. He'd laugh when I made a ridiculous statement in my language, and then try hard to repeat back to me. He liked it when I taught him the names of animals and colors in my language. Say it again, he'd plead repeatedly, laughing at me when I did it all dramatic-like. That was my thing, trading words that were from a place he didn't know, but loved to hear me say. It made me feel like I was carrying on. A little, living piece of me. I wasn't trying to fill somebody's shoes. It was just that I wanted to be a part of something in a way that didn't require the erasure of me. And tension arrived. She called one evening, and I heard her voice on the phone even though I wasn't on the call. She was upset. Not frustrated upset in that huge, burning way that has the force of personal injustice, like betrayal. When my partner finally hung up, he was drained. She's upset that you're speaking with him in another language, he murmured. She said he's getting confused. That it's not right. I remained seated, my fork in midair. Perplexed? He asked me to instruct him. He likes it. I know, he said. I know. But she says it's not your business. I didn't say much afterwards. I just nodded and swallowed, my throat catching on something. That evening, I wept while showering. Not that it was really anything, just slow, silent tears that got washed away before they could even dry on my skin. I didn't want to rock the boat. But I didn't want to disappear out of a segment of his life that had felt so very real, either. After he got that call, the rules changed. When he was around us, I'd catch him hesitating before the words I'd taught him. He'd whisper them or look over his shoulder, as if checking to see if it was all right. I started avoiding using them myself, not out of a lack of desire to be generous, but so he wouldn't feel trapped in the middle. But I felt like I was losing touch with him. Like someone had drawn a line you weren't allowed to cross. She started making other requests too. That I avoid cooking my cultural foods when he was around. That I keep cultural ornaments out of sight. That I stop taking him to festivals or community events. It's confusing him, she said. He's American. Let him be American. But he was American. And still, he had space for more. More words. More foods. More views of the world. Why was that so intimidating? I held all of this in. I didn't want to cause tension between them. I knew co-parenting was hard enough. But deep within me, I was grieving something that I couldn't even define. I loved that boy. I wasn't trying to mother him, but I was becoming someone who counted to him. And I was being told to become invisible. I never fought back in public. I just shrank. Whispered. I stopped correcting him when he'd misremember a word I'd helped him learn. I started cooking foods that were neutral, although I missed the spices and smells of home. I smiled for it, but in secret, I was dismantling myself piece by piece. And then I found out I was pregnant. The second that the test showed 2 pink lines, I felt the world spin around me. The stillness was no longer the same thick, charged. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared out the window, my hand resting over my belly. Unbelievable. Beautiful and scary all at the same time. When I told my partner, he embraced me and cried. We both did. It was joy, naturally. But fear too. For we both knew what would be awakened. She learned a couple of weeks later. And when she did, everything was different. I expected her to be angry or insouciant. But no, she showed up at our door one day. Her face was unreadable, her arms crossed over her chest like a guard. I opened the door slowly, not sure what she would say. I heard, she said flatly. I nodded. Yes. There was a moment's silence. Then she delivered a sentence I wasn't prepared for. Just don't forget him. That's all I ask. When your baby is born, don't make my son feel like an intruder. The way she said it, as though she already knew that it would be so. As though it was sure to be so, that I would love my own child more than hers. Something turned inside me. I would never do that, I said softly. He's not a stranger to me. He's family. She laughed, as if she didn't think I meant it. You say that now. But wait until it's your own flesh and blood. Everything is different then. And she walked out. I remained there for what seemed like forever, just looking at where she'd been standing. My hands were on my belly, and I could sense the gentle quiver, as if my daughter was letting me know she was still there. I was scared. Not of being a mother, but of how to be a mother to both of them. How to love them both the same. How to keep some of me, without keeping someone else out. The next few months, things slowly shifted once more, but not the way I had hoped. Her walls did not grow thicker. Instead, they started to crumble. Not dramatically. Simply in pieces. She texted one day to inquire if I needed something. Another day, she came by and dropped off a box of baby clothes she'd held onto for years. She never stuck around. But she started making eye contact with me. And when, one time, I thanked her, she just nodded and said, "It's for him too. He is waiting for it. He talks about her all the time." This was the first time she'd acknowledged that we were raising these kids, both of them together. The night I went into labor, it was raining torrentially. The kind of rain that makes everything feel quiet and urgent at the same time. I remember clutching my belly in the hallway, breathing through the pain, and knowing that none of this was going to be clean or easy. But I also remember my stepson standing there with wide eyes and restless hands, staring at me as if I was made of something fragile and resilient at the same time. He was asking if she was okay. He meant the baby, but I knew he was also asking about me. After the hospital, after the tiredness, the tears, and the first time I held her little body close to my chest, everything changed. And not only inside our home. Even outside of it, in ways I never could have imagined. My stepson was smitten with his baby sister. From the day he first saw her, his world seemed to expand. He wanted to hold her, sing to her, rock her when she was crying. He would look up at me with those big eyes and whisper, "Is she happy now? Or does she like my song?" He would ask to read her a story every night, even when she was asleep, because babies still hear, even when their eyes are closed. I felt a thing melt within me. This was my fear that love would be different. But it wasn't. Not in the way I was afraid. Loving her didn't lessen him at all. It made me want to protect both of them even more. And she saw that. The biological mother came by to pick him up a few days after we'd gotten the baby home. She looked drained, like she'd been holding her breath since she got the news. I opened the door, holding the baby in my arms. He rushed to her, smiling and telling her all about his new sister. "She's so small. And she makes little squeaky sounds. And I helped burp her yesterday, and she smiled at me, I think. She did, musing his hair. Then she spotted me. I froze. She came toward me, slow and tentative, like she was edging up to a stranger she wasn't quite sure she could trust yet. She looked down at the baby, then back up at me. "She looks like you," she said. It wasn't nasty. It wasn't warm either. Just matter of fact. "She's got his nose though," I said, smiling a little. A spark flickered in her eyes. She did not answer right away. Then she spoke. "He said you gave him permission to sing lullabies in both languages. That you said it makes the baby dream in colors." My chest tightened. That was a casual comment I'd made one evening when he was rocking her softly and humming a tune we'd created together. I didn't think he remembered. But he did. "I did," I said. "He wanted to. He said he didn't want her to forget who we are." And then for the first time she didn't correct me. She didn't say who you are. She just nodded. "He really loves her," she said quietly. I didn't expect that. I didn't either, I admitted. "But it's real." She looked away, her hand tightening on the strap of her purse. I was scared. That he'd feel replaced. That he wouldn't fit anymore. That she'd get more of you than he ever did. I took a step closer. My tone was even but gentle. "That's not what this is. He didn't lose anything. He gained someone. And so did I." She had never looked at me before, not truly. And I saw it, the struggle in her face. The part of her that still didn't want to share, and the part of her that knew she already had. "I don't want him to feel divided," she said. "Torn between two homes, two mothers, two cultures." "I don't either," I whispered. "I just want him to feel whole." It wasn't a bargain. But it wasn't warfare either. And in our history, that was progress. In time, the chasms became bridges. We started to coordinate more, not just calendars, but values. I would send her pictures of the baby when her son wasn't around, just so she could feel included. And she started to inquire about things, ask, not demand. "What lullabies do you sing at night? What are you feeding them these days? Can I take him to a cultural fair next week and expose him to my side of things too?" That one got me. Because it wasn't about control. It was about sharing. It was the first time she opened the door in the other direction. I said yes, sure. And I meant it. And then one night months later she asked me over. It was for his school play. She asked me to drive together. Said it would mean a lot if we both sat front row. I didn't know what to say. Half of me was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But she appeared sincere. Nervous even. We went together. Sat together, side by side. Our boy walked out onto the stage and scanned out into the crowd, and when he saw the two of us, he grinned so wide I feared his cheeks would burst. When the play ended, he hugged the two of us at once. One on each side of him. As if we were one. One family unit, if not in the traditional sense. In that moment, I was aware that something was irretrievably changed. There are still hard days. Still moments when I have to remind myself to breathe, to have faith, to stay soft even when I want to protect what's mine. But I've learned that motherhood has nothing to do with biology. It has to do with the act of showing up. Over and over. Even when it hurts. Even when your heart is too full or too exposed. She and I may never be friends. But we're not duking it out in the darkness anymore. We've chosen something bigger than pride. We've chosen the kids. And I've learned this: love doesn't divide when it's real. It multiplies. I once thought that motherhood was something you entered only after there was a baby born of your own body. I once thought love followed after biology. That blood-created bond. But I don't believe it now. Not since all we've been through together. Not since seeing how love can turn out in the most unlikely, messiest of ways. The biggest shift crept up on us, the kind you don't even notice until you freeze and turn around. We were cooking dinner together one evening. I was trying to stir the pot with one hand and the baby was munching on a teething toy in the other, and my stepson was sitting at the counter doing homework. He asked me how you say strength in my country. He told me he wanted to place it after his name on the cover of his notebook because it means something now. I breathed the word. Softly, slowly. He copied it out slowly, smiling when he was able to reproduce the accent marks properly. And then he said, "Do you think Mom would be okay with it?" I looked up, my heart aching. "I think if you tell her why it matters to you, she will." He nodded, quiet for an instant. Then he spoke something that stopped me in my tracks. "I don't think I have two moms. I think I have one mom and one safe place." I don't even think he knew what that was back then. But I did. He wasn't trying to draw a line between us against each other. He was identifying with what he was experiencing. I wasn't his stand-in mom. I wasn't trying to be. But I was his refuge. And there's a kind of honor in that which I hadn't expected. When I said it to her, weeks later, she reacted as I'd hoped not. She didn't get defensive. She just blinked and whispered, "He's always been sensitive. Always found words the rest of us didn't." And then she said, "I think he's better because of both of us." Even though it took me long enough to know. It took me long enough too. There were just so many times I think back on now, and question how differently they might have gone if only we'd given each other more grace. If she could have perceived me as a plus, not a minus. If I could have gotten it sooner about just how deeply she was scared of being replaced, even if she never ever said it out loud. But I've learned that even trust shattered can heal if the two of them will let go of the defending and talking and start listening. It's not perfect yet. We still don't agree. We still live in different worlds socially, emotionally, even spiritually. But the walls have come down. Not all the way. But enough to see through. Enough to share love without it getting stuck in the middle. We happened to be at one of the children's friends' birthday party sometime in the afternoon. The baby, now toddler, had fallen and skinned her knee, and before I even had a chance to get near her, my stepson already had her up in his arms and led her straight to his mother. And she automatically kissed her forehead, wiped away her tears, and soothed her as though she had done it 1,000 times. I stood a few feet off. And she looked over at me, with the baby on her hip, and smiled. "She's fine," she mouthed. I walked over, thanked her, and folded my arms around my daughter. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, two women so different in so many things, brought together not by marriage or blood, but by the quiet, common act of loving the same children. And I knew at that point that this is what family sometimes is. It doesn't always look like the photographs in the books on parenting. It doesn't always look like neatly drawn lines or shared last names or carefully differentiated roles. Sometimes it's dirty. Sometimes it's tense. But sometimes, if you're fortunate, it's real. And it teaches you more about love than any tradition ever has. Now, years later, my daughter knows her brother came first. And she knows she is part sharing not just with me, but with a woman who loves her too, in her own quiet way. We talk about it openly. We celebrate our differences, we do not hide them. My children are well versed in more than one language. They eat more than one type of cuisine. They are part of more than one story. And they are strong because of it. I no longer shrink myself to fit within these walls to make peace. I no longer conceal my culture behind these doors. My home is a blend now of colors, sounds, smells, and stories. It's not always simple, but it's always full. And I think, in her own fashion, she is too. We've become something none of us ever imagined. A family with cracks, but also with light streaming through those cracks. Had you asked me years ago if it were possible, I would have shaken my head. I would have told you that the gap between two mothers, one who has a history, one who has a future, was too wide to cover. But sometimes a child in the middle stretching out toward both of you is enough to bridge the gap. And once you've crossed, you never look back.